Let's see. I believe it's 6 seconds.
Yeah, it does that thing.
Good evening and welcome to Sugar and Silk, brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. My name is Ben Doughty, and the guy just talking, just slightly not on cue there, was
Michael Silk Olajide scratching his head at the same time.
We are joined by
Monte Barrett, Monte Two Guns Barrett.
Two Guns. What's going on, baby?
I was hoping he wasn't going to admit the nickname because you have to have a nickname. You have to have a nickname. It wouldn't have sounded right if it just said he was playing on Monte Barrett.
Know. Yeah, I know, right. Yeah. You know
Monte.
what? To be honest with you, I got the nickname. My trainer gave it to me. And then Harold Letterman, who's a big supporter and a big fan, one day he was like, and Monte shot him down like he had two guns. And then it just like stuck.
Yeah, do you know, there was another fighter. You often find that nicknames are replicated over the history of boxing. And there was another fighter called Two Gun that I remember was Anthony Fletcher, who was actually Frank the Animal Fletcher's brother.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, now I didn't know that. I know it was a couple of Two Guns. It was a guy named, I think, I forgot the guy's name. It'll come to me, but I remember hearing his name. Yeah. He was in Vegas. I used to this name a gentleman named Abraham Davis. They called him Pops. He died in 2017. He was 102 years old.
Wow.
He was born in 2014. I mean 1914. I said 2014. He was born in 1914, but he was a great man. He showed me how to fight, and I owed everything that I learned. I owe it to him.
Now, where did you meet him?
I met him through a fighter in Brooklyn who his name was Herbie Ville.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was the Golden Glove guy. He used to box with Riddick Bowe at the gym in Brooklyn all the time. Yeah. And I had got him a job because I had a collision. I was giving people jobs in Queens. I got him a job, and he was like, he knew me for fighting in the streets, and he was like, yo. He said, I got this old man who can teach you some real good stuff. I said, who? He said his name is Pops. He was training a couple of fighters at the time. He trained Bruce Finch when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard.
Okay.
Right. So Pops, he took me to his house, and then it was next thing you know, I was in the dungeon. We went downstairs in the basement, and he had pulleys. He had bungee cords on that was tied into the wall. He bolted the pulleys into the wall, and he had you just getting strong, just pulling the pulley. And then he'd have a jab pulley and a double end back pulley and heavy back pulley. And he had a little room. It had spiders and it had mice in it and everything, but they was home, and everybody went down there to train and get big and get strong.
Yeah. Wow.
So
wow.
You were talking off camera. We were talking, Monte, about the Starrett City gym. You were talking about how you were trained by Zab Judah's father, Joel, but also that you trained at Starrett City, where I know there's a legendary trainer back there who died about 10 years ago called Jimmy O'Farrell, who was a massively important boxing guru and a father figure to many of the young men in that area of New York.
Yeah, Jimmy O was one of a kind. Al Davis took me to Jimmy O, and him and Jimmy Glenn. I don't know if you heard Jimmy Glenn. He was the cut man, right, exactly. He has a bar, Jimmy's Corner. So they told me they took me over there to Jimmy O'Farrell, and he became like a father to me. He was a blessing to Shannon Briggs, Louis Collazo. Everybody that went into his gym became like his son, and he has so much knowledge and information. And also, he was so good because he had Star City behind us, and they sponsored me to go all around the country fighting. And that's how I got good, because all the trips were paid for.
Okay.
And as long as I kept fighting and winning, he kept getting sponsorship from Star City, and I was able to go and do big things.
Now, let me ask you, Monte, how old were you at the time? When did you start boxing?
I started boxing at 22.
What?
That's pretty late.
Pretty late. I was a grown man fighting kids, man. I was paying bills and everything. I had my own business. I just did a community college. I came out of college. I was a grown man fighting, but I always had it because, like Al said, Pop said, you can train a fighter to do many things, but you can't train a fighter to have heart.
Yeah.
He said, and you got a whole bunch of that. Now I have to teach you how to box and learn some skills behind that.
So let me ask you. So what were you doing? Were you doing any other sports before 22 years old?
Yes, I played sports all my life. I mean, the first sport I played was in the streets. I was in the streets, but besides that, I played baseball from the 4th grade to the 6th grade,
Yeah.
and then when I got in middle school, I played junior high school. I played basketball, and then when I got in high school, I ran track and played football. I was All American, All City, All Queens at the Daily News, and I also ran track.
And not one of those things are like boxing. And that's what's so incredibly amazing, because what happens is the older you start in boxing, the more painful it is. So the less likely you are to learn the things you need to learn.
Yeah.
When you're starting in single digits, like you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, before the man strength starts to kick in, that's the best time to learn boxing, because it isn't painful to learn to slip or punch.
True.
If it hurts, if I get hit every time I'm trying to learn to slip or punch, after a while, I'm just not going to slip the punch anymore. So there's, you know what I mean? It takes away the incentive. But the fact that you're able to do that, and even just the skills of throwing combinations and letting your hands go, that's massive. At 22 years of age, you're generally like landlocked. Is that?
I think as well, Monte and Silk. I think often that kind of backstory is often peculiar to the heavyweight division. It mostly applies that you need to start young and you need to get on the horse pretty early for the reasons you just detailed. But they will often find a big athletic guy who's already in his 20s, early 20s, but boxing people will identify that kind of talent, latent as it might be, and they'll be like, you can still do this, son. You're a heavyweight, so it's different. You mature later. There's less of you. There's less guys walking around that size, although I know Monte wasn't the biggest heavyweight. But you know what I mean? In the heavyweight division, that seems to be a possible story. You can take it up late and still be very successful.
But I was small. I was a small heavyweight in the space I was in the years that I boxed. And it was a guy named Ty Fields. I fought him. I knocked him out in the first round on HBO, 57 seconds. He started when he was 22 as well.
You know, I had a drink with that guy once. He came second in the prize fighter, international prize fighter in North London. I think it was 2011 or 2010. And I had a Hungarian fighter, or I was assisting a Hungarian fighter in the tournament. And Ty Fields, he lost in the final. He got stopped by Mike Perez, the Cuban. But he was good company. He was having a few drinks afterwards. Like he still had the 16 grand semi-final prize, and he was good company. He was a good guy.
Good guy, yes, good guy. So crazy. You know what I noticed, like what Michael said. One thing about boxing, you know, when you start late, you know, you feel punches. Like when you're younger, you're like Superman. You don't feel anything. That's why the last fight when I fought Luis Ortiz, and I said I had a conscience going into the fight. For one, I went in 2 weeks of just for 2 weeks for preparation, but I was too conscious, worried about how I was going to get hit and taking punches, and I was like, I said, if this fight doesn't work out for me, I'm done. Because I knew, you know how you know it? Like, as fighters, we cannot be conscious of getting hit. Like
that's one thing. Yeah. Once you're conscious of the pain and you start to feel it, you start to feel the little things you wouldn't usually feel. You're usually
what I think it is, I think it's a reality has finally dawned on you, because there's a denial which fighters need, this wall of arrogance and self-belief to be successful.
No, actually,
it's called Father Time.
You know what it is, Ben? you know what it really is? I think there's also medically or physiologically, whatever it may be.
Your resistance goes.
The resistance to the adrenaline. Like you have less adrenaline, and adrenaline is some of the things that mask pain.
Mike, you know what I think it is? For me, it was age and having more of a conscience, right? Because as we get older, we get softer and hard. We get softer in spirit, right? And we start to submit to certain things, right? And one of the things we submit to is that our superhero instincts, that we are not Superman anymore. And I think that we're so much more conscious. Like me, like, you know, every year and every day I become a different person. I wasn't the same person when I was 22, when I was in the street and I was boxing. I was like Superman, right? And then when you get older, you meet your kryptonite. Those punches, they catch on to you. They catch up to you, right?
Yeah, they do catch up. Now, you're saying that you'd mentioned the streets a couple of times. You were born in Brooklyn.
No, I was born in North Carolina in
North
Greenville,
Carolina.
but I
Okay.
came here at 1 year old in Queens, South Side.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you came over to Queens at 1 year of age. What was life like growing up from Monte Barrett? What was that?
Life was, it was kind, I mean, life was, as kids are, when you're young, you have to
Yeah.
adapt. So I thought life was great, you know what I'm saying? But I experienced a lot of hardship, you know, and and not to blame anyone, it's just my path. My path was kind of hard, and
Yeah.
it was like, I was molested, I was in violence, I was selling drugs at 11, 12 years old. I was
Wow.
exposed to a lot, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was exposed to a lot of violence.
Were you
And
exposed to it in your home life, or like when you went
in my
outside the
yeah,
country?
first is always in your home life. It was, I was exposed to it in my home life, and then from that point on, you know, it became a way of life.
Wow.
You become a product of the environment, right? So me having all those things happen to me, it was just a way of life. I didn't know any different until I got older.
Did you use that as fuel in your athletics, in your sports, do you think, or in your boxing in any way? Did that help work things out, or no? It's just an absolutely separate.
Well, if I think I was an angry kid, and I always wanted to be accepted because of the rejection, right?
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
always wanted to be the man, or
Yeah.
be moving forward, or be known, right?
Yeah.
And I was very known in the streets for fighting. I had
Yeah.
legendary fights in the streets, and and so when I started boxing, it was like, it was an oxymoron. Like, wow,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Monte
Yeah.
is boxing, and he was the man. He was violent in the street, right?
Yeah.
So that
But
was that.
so like when you're, I mean, on the streets and then in the ring, even though they're familiar, they're not quite the same. So you had, because all things are even in a fight, and all things aren't always even in the street, right? So what was this attitude like? Like, did you have a killer instinct? You were an instigator, and was it the same personality character you had on the street? Was it the same you carried into the ring?
I always been a very laid back, mellow type of person.
Yeah.
Most of the fights I was fighting people like for my friends, because we had, like, back then it wasn't on gangs, it was a crew.
Yeah.
But I was the youngest out of the crew, but I was the biggest.
Yeah.
So back in those days, it was like beat up the big guy and everybody else gonna run.
That's true.
So I had to fight everybody fight, and then I was a little cocky,
Yeah.
because I had a chip on my shoulder because of all the pain I was dealing with, right?
Yeah.
From childhood. I didn't know,
Yeah.
I just realized when I hear people talk about me coming up and the things they say, and I said, wow, I can hear where the pain was. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
So when
Yeah.
you were saying when you were young and you were hurt and you were molested, you had said, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like that kind of anger, that kind of frustration, that kind of fuel, you weren't able to do anything with it at that time. Obviously, there wasn't any kind of psychoanalysis or anything you're going through where you were at. You have brothers and sisters?
I have a sister. We're 8 years apart. But as a man in the 70s, as a young kid, you're taught to shut up, mind your business, and don't say nothing. It's in a black culture, it's a taboo. It's a family
Yeah.
taboo,
Yeah.
and you keep that between your family, and
Yeah.
nobody is no healing, because there's no acceptance, right?
Yeah.
So that for me, it was more so like I became a product of my environment, which was violence, right? My
Yeah.
stepfather, before he passed away a couple of years ago, he was a good guy. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Like
Sure.
me, we all
Yeah.
got our cross to carry, right?
Yeah.
But then when he was in his 20s and he met my mother, and my mother was 16, 17 years old, he was very destructive to me and my mom's, and he was very abusive. Why? But I mean, listen, we have, before he passed away, me and my father my stepfather, we had a great relationship. I loved him dearly,
Yeah.
and he came to terms with who he was, and he was a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
But when we were younger, when I was younger, he was a little monster. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And that's
yeah.
just and you listen. My mother she was teenager. She was 17 years old. She didn't know any better,
When she
right?
had you.
Yeah, she had me at 16, and then when she moved to New York, she was 17. But
Mhm.
in all on her in her defense, she didn't know any better. She just was, she's a young girl from the country with
Yeah.
probably 5 to 10,000 population, if that.
Sure.
And she's coming to New York, to the big rotten apple.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it was supposed to be the big apple, but it was a
Yeah.
rotten apple for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's some history you got going on there. And may I ask you also, before we step back into the boxing, what about your father, your biological father?
Well, I didn't find out who my biological father was till I was 50 years old. That's crazy.
No.
I'm 51. I'll be 52 this in May, but 50 years old, I just found out who he was. I had an idea. It was between two different guys, but I was able to find out who he was. He had passed May 25th, like 2018, a day before my birthday, right?
Wow.
Because I was born, but I knew I had an idea, and he has a twin brother that him and I are close, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
got a chance, and believe it or not, his twin brother was always around when I used to go to my grandparents' house because my
yeah,
grandparents was my safe haven. So I went there
yeah,
every summer from the age of 5 to 16.
yeah.
So my mother did some really good things for me by let me go to my grandparents
Yes,
because it was structure.
of
It
course.
was a lot of love
Yeah.
and it was balanced. They kept me in
Mhm.
the Boys and Girls
Yeah.
Club. We went to the Elks Club because they was Masons, and we went to church. And Monday through
Yes.
Friday, I would be in a boys club where it was
Yeah.
structure and you learn how to deal with socializing.
I
So
got.
and being around family, so it was good. I like I said, that was like the highlight of my whole year going down
Yeah.
south to see my grandparents.
Yeah. So not a lot of great memories coming up as a kid, as an adolescent,
Well, I
pre-adolescent.
had great memories, fighting in the streets, all them legendary fights, man. Those are great, man.
Yeah.
Listen, running around and stealing cars and hustling. To
Yes.
me, that was great because that's all I knew, right?
Yeah.
Me and my
Yeah.
boy used to go uptown and buy drugs and
Yeah.
come back down. Like we did all that stuff because that's what we were. We were a part of that. But then
Yeah.
I knew something bigger, right? I was in a car accident in 1986, Thanksgiving night.
Hmm.
I was 16 years old. I was
Hmm.
in a coma for 2 months, right? They told me I wasn't going to walk again.
Yeah.
I had a puncture. I still got a hole in my side because they had to put a hole. I had
Yeah.
a punctured lung. I was bleeding internally.
Yeah.
4 broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, neck, and I was out. I had 150 stitches in my ear, came off,
Yeah.
and that Mike Tyson ain't bite it off. The car accident did it. But at the same time, I was blessed. I mean, I was in a coma for 2 months, and God and somebody was looking over me. Angels, God, somebody got me through that. Just like through everything I've been through,
Yeah.
it built my faith. I wasn't a person of faith then. I
Yeah.
used to go to church every now and again with my relatives.
Hmm.
But at the same time, all of my pain had a purpose for it, right? Because it made me who I am today. I'm a
Yeah.
man of strong faith. I pray, I meditate. I am an example of love, the love of God, of
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And that's and what if I had to go through that to get here, then I'll
Yeah.
do it all over again.
So you would do it all over again.
Right.
So wow, that's incredible, man. It's an incredible story.
I can hear that forgiveness, by the way. Forgive me for cutting in, Silk. In the
No,
maturity and the forgiveness you display when you talk about your stepfather and the difficult relationship in your earlier years, and it would be possible to harbour resentments forever and to blame your mother for it as well. But I can hear a lot of kind of wisdom and kind of forgiveness in the way you speak about that, Monte.
yeah.
Yeah, so before we get on to the good things in the career, let me tell you something. So I did a couple of weeks ago. I did a thing on interview, and it was a very decent interview. I'm very vulnerable, and I'm very open about my life. Because I feel like when I tell people my story, I did a Deadspin. I did an article in Deadspin, and a lot of people came to it and it was like reaching out for me like, yo, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I needed that, I needed that.
Hmm.
Long
Yeah.
story short, my mother, she was really upset about it, and she came
Okay.
out. She attacked me. She attacked me really bad. Said some really bad things like I was a
She didn't
killer.
think you could have shared some of that stuff publicly
Huh?
because she
She
doesn't
didn't
think
think you
you could have
should
shared some of the
share.
things you shared.
She said I was a liar and that
Oh,
I kill people for a living. I killed my
okay.
uncle, I killed my cousin, I killed my nephew, and I kill people for a living. She went on social media. She texted me the most horrible messages,
God.
and what I did was I don't I was really hurt, and I think I went to a semi of depression. Because my wife, I was like, man, I'm so tired all the time. And mind you,
Yeah.
I run 50 miles a month and I work out 4 times a week. And I was so tired for the past week, right? So when I went to church, last week, and I had a moment. I started crying, and I just asked God to forgive me for anything that I did outside His will, and
Yeah.
God put it on my heart for me to text my mother. So right in church, I said, I love you, and I hope you get better, and I hope that you heal from that. And I was able to release that. I don't know if she received it or not, because she blocked me, whatever. But at the same time, I had to release myself from that. I forgive and love my mother. She's my first love. But nobody's right. Let me just explain this.
Yes.
I'm a parent. I failed at being a parent. I don't have it's not a manual on how to be the best parent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm working on building my relationship with my kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And they went through some trauma, and I got to accept them. You know what I said to my kids? I'm sorry for the pain that I caused you on my behalf. And then I say, I take accountability that I was wrong. How can I help you? Right.
Yeah.
And every time we building a relationship, but they'll come to me sometime and they dealing with some stuff from the past that I know nothing about. That's their reality. I gotta embrace that, and I gotta say, I'm sorry. And I'm very humble. I said, baby, I'm sorry. What can daddy do? That's all.
Yeah.
And they say, sometimes they'll say, just give me a couple of days. And I gotta back off and give them a couple of days. And then they'll call me and say, daddy, I was just going through something. We'll talk about it and we're done with it, right? But we go through this, this is a lot of hurt and a lot of built up pain, right? So this is things that take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's gonna take time for people to completely heal. And you never completely heal, but you learn to deal with what you have.
Well, what happens, right? Exactly what you're saying, Monty, is what happens is when we have trauma, when trauma happens to us, and most of us, especially when we don't have professional help, we tend to stay at the point that trauma happened. No matter how time goes on, we still stay at that. We can't get past the trauma. So you stay at that age. If trauma happened to you at 14, 15, 16, whatever happened, this is where your mind, your body, your spirit stays until you're able to release it and let go and forgive and all those other things you're talking about. Then you can go on and continue that normal or even an exceptional life, which is what you've done. You've carved out something exceptional for yourself.
But listen, Michael, I'm gonna tell you this last thing. So my daughter, she's 26 now, and we're closing the gap, and we have a great relationship now. But and her mother is one hell of a mom. You know what I'm saying? She raised her. She raised all four of my daughters, amazing graduates, and and career, and and all the credit. She deserves all the credit, because I wasn't there as a father to fill in the gap, right?
Yeah.
So I asked my daughter, I need to email her something. So I said, what's your email? She said her name, and she said 7 at Gmail. I said, what's 7 for? She said, because that's when you and mommy broke up and got divorced. Boom. My heart dropped. I started crying. I had to hang up with her, and I had to really embrace that. Like, that's heavy, that her email is the year, her age when me and her mother divorced, and all the pain she went through as a child, because as I was a child, we just made adjustments. Kids are very soft and they're very adjustable. We make adjustments, right?
Yeah, malleable.
And even right now, my youngest daughter, who's 8, but me and her mother separated when she was 7. And my daughter, who's 26 now, she said, Daddy, be there and don't continue to fight for Gabby. Don't give up on her, because I know how that feels. Right? Even though I never gave up on my kids, but I felt like I didn't want to fight, because I've been fighting my whole life. Right? If it wasn't in the ring, it was in the streets. If it wasn't there, it was in home. I just kind of pulled back, and it's not a good thing. But I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for a while, and I go to therapy because now my therapy that's my coach. She's gonna get me across the finish line. She's gonna get me to that 12th round. Right, that championship round. And I think it's so important for men to have therapy, because it's not a person trying to give you answers or criticize you. It's a person trying to help you and coach you so you can do better.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. That's no, Ben, I don't know if you have anything more to add on that.
I was wondering what you were going to say next, because Monte is such a fantastic guest, and he's been so. I love the way it's got nothing to do with boxing right now, and it's. I see we've still got the viewers. The audience has not gone anywhere.
It has nothing to do with boxing, but has everything to do with the fight, which is life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the fight.
And I think because I know some of some of what you say resonates with me because I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink for just over 6 years, and some of these same things, the same themes about forgiveness, resentment, and recognizing our own parts in things and our own culpability, and and forgiveness and apologizing and making amends. There's a lot of that involved, whatever it is that gets you to that point, whether it's trauma, addiction, both, So,
Right.
I mean, that's something that it's good to hear. You see a lot of fighters, right, Monte, particularly guys who didn't quite get to the mountaintop, but they scale close to it. They can sometimes end up with nothing but a scrambled brains and a gym bag full of broken dreams and a whole bunch of resentments. So it's fantastic, even though we haven't even touched on your remarkable career yet. It's fantastic to hear someone who is so articulate and in a good place, philosophically, and understands certain things that he didn't understand when he was young and foolish and bravadous,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things we still have to, atone to as we grow older. Like now I know that I'm in an older place, even though I was there every day for my children. At the same time, I wasn't always really there for them. Like you can zone out. You may not have addictions. You may not have all these other things, but
Yeah, life hits you.
yeah, you know what I mean? And then all you're doing is if someone's not putting you on point, all you're doing is building up regret.
Yeah.
And regret's one of the hardest things to get over with. I mean, speaking of regret, that's one of the things I want to talk to you. And it's a good segue back into your boxing is that, do you regret any direction you've taken in your fight career?
Okay, I regret a few things, but the two big things I regret fighting Hasim Rockman because that was a money trap. And I regret I didn't regret I regret I didn't retire after the Klitschko fight. I mean after the David Tua fight. The second David Tua fight, I regret I didn't retire because you know what I'm saying? As an athlete, we always feel like we Superman. And even though that was one of my best performance, especially in my 40s to fight the way I fought him, the point of it is that, it was time to go. And I didn't have no plan B, So
how old were you at that time?
40 something years old.
Oh, wow.
When I fought David, the second fight, I was like 40 something. I think that was in 2011. Yeah, 2000. I was like 39, 40, something like that. I think, matter of fact, I was 40. Yeah, 40. Yep. So at that point in time, I was like, man, I regret that I didn't stop when I should have stopped.
And it was just the law of the money? Was it quite simply the law of the money?
No, I think it was a little bit of everything. So it was a little bit of insecurity. It was a little bit of instability. It was a little bit of the money and the fame, right? Because, most athletes, not just boxers are just a little bit more unsettled than other athletes because we don't have a union. We don't have no protection, right?
No.
And the promoters and the network control everything. They control all the money. We just get a little piece here and there.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, man, what am I gonna do next? You know what I'm saying? I had a little bit of dollars, but not the money that I made.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure things out. And then my lady at the time was pregnant with my daughter. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, what's going on? But that was in 2014 when I fought Luis Ortiz. But like I said, after the David Tua fight, I just think I should have. And I was in a bad space emotionally and mentally as well.
Roy Leonard said to me when he was speaking about his comebacks, the ill-fated comebacks against Terry Norris and Hector Camacho, he said he came back because he felt safe in the ring. He felt relatively more stable in the ring than he did anywhere else. Do you identify with that?
Well, I always identify with the ring as the most one of the safest places, but the most loneliest places.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very. Like, listen, you know what I'm saying? I'm in a war zone since I came out my mother's womb, right? So I'm comfortable there, right? But it's also so lonely, right? It's just it's lonely. I mean, you got everybody cheering for you. And then when you get in that ring, it's just you and that guy. And then
it's quiet, and you're alone with your own thoughts.
and you hear right, you alone with your thoughts and everybody else's thoughts, because you
Yeah.
have that one person. And I've been in fights, and I keen to one person in an arena. Sometimes, most of the time it's my trainer, but sometimes it'll be somebody else.
Yeah.
And I can hear that one person every caters.
Yeah.
And I gotta get through that, because sometimes what they telling me ain't the right thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I've had that same thing happen to me. But what happens with me when I got into the ring and I had that, I would always, I don't hear a voice, but the time I do hear a voice, I know that I'm not in, that I'm not, like, I haven't self-hypnotized. I'm not I'm really in the fight, because I hear somebody saying something down. I hear the announcers saying things, and I hear people yelling certain words or instructions. And the times when I'm at my best, I'm not hearing anything.
Right.
Do you
When
ever
I
hear the
fought-
commentators, Monte? Did you ever hear the commentators during your fights ever?
Just one time. One
Yeah,
time
go
I did, and that was when I fought the Dominique Gwynn fight, and that was one of my best fights. But I know that like, you know, when I fought David Tua, my second fight, I've ran 125 miles for that fight. I boxed 80 plus rounds. I had James Ali Bashir as my trainer. I pushed myself. I was like 40 something, like I said, 41, whatever, 40, 42. I pushed myself like nobody business. I was running from, I lived in Bayonne, New Jersey. I ran to Staten Island and to Bayonne back like 4 times a week.
And why was that? Was it because you felt insecure? You felt you wouldn't be in shape? Like what?
No, I just wanted. No, I was always decent. Like if I go through all my pictures, I'm like physically, I'm always in shape. My shape is mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, right? Because you know I deal with a lot of chaos in my emotions with where am I as far as my stick to measure myself, my measuring stick.
Yeah.
Right. So I always want to outdo myself. So I thought David Tua was running 2 miles a day, so I ran 4 miles a day. Right. I wanted to outdo. I thought when I was boxing, and this is my mindset, and Bazier asked me, I said, listen, I said, let's box a couple of more rounds. Well, I boxed 10 rounds. I said, let's do 12. He said, we good. I said, listen, I said, just for my confidence. I said, because David Tua is probably doing the same thing. I wanted to have an edge. So when I went into that fight, I had the edge. Quick story. Me and Zab are like, you know, best friends. Like he's my, you know, he's gonna be the best man at my wedding and everything. And so we went to Casa Zoo when he fought Casa Zoo in Vegas. You know, I had got Zab his own wheel company. It was called the Zab Judah spinning wheel. Back like the Latrell Spree wheel. Right, I got him that deal. And we was out there with Mayweather. We was every night for like a week. Mayweather and Zab, we all played basketball, right? And Zab was getting ready for a fight. But you know, the Vegas time is different.
Yeah.
Every day, every night we did it for 4 games, 4 court. After every fight, after every game we played, like every night, Mayweather would get his bag out of his car and put on his jumpsuit, his workout stuff, and he would run 4 miles on the treadmill every night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's exceptionally a lot of discipline and obedience.
Yes.
And he believed in himself. Look, it all paid off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wish I had that discipline. You know, he was bred for that. You know what I'm saying? Because he's been through a lot of chaotic stuff himself as well. Right?
But I heard Floyd would like attend a gala ceremony in a tuxedo, and he has taken the blazer off before and ran home from wherever the ceremony was to wherever he was going.
Listen, I believe you, because let me tell you something. I've seen him for the whole week, every night. We play, you know, you got 10, 20 guys, and then we talking junk. We playing basketball. It's a lot of energy, right? And just for him to get on, put in his stuff, his workout stuff, and run 4 miles every night. After that,
well, you see what happened. You see what happened with 2 things. It's really interesting to me. You see after the Olympics when Floyd lost his Olympic fight, and when Roy Jones lost his, and Roy was upset, but you see Floyd really come apart with that controversial decision. Like I remember seeing Roy's, because that was just beyond controversial. That was a wipeout, and they still gave it to the Korean kid. When that happened to Floyd, the same thing, but Floyd just came undone. Like, so you knew that he took that fuel like that from his experiences in his life, and he put it like it's just a natural part of his constitution, and he used that in order to, fuel what he became as a professional boxer, which is beyond exceptional.
And you see, he's an emotional person. I've been around Floyd.
Yeah.
He's actually a good guy. But, when I trained with Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, I was in Vegas a lot.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
every time I see Floyd, it's nothing but love. But when I see him crying, and I see any man crying and exposing himself in front of the world, I don't care what it is. It's a lot of pain, right? And to be able, and he's so comfortable in that ring, right? That he can release from there. Like when I'm in church, I cry. Right?
Yeah.
When I'm at home, I cry. That's where I feel safe at, right? But for you to be in front of the world and let it out, even if you cry because you're happy or whatever, that's a bonus. Men don't cry. We are taught to hold everything in, mind your business, go in the corner and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right?
No, 100%. What was it like training with Eddie Mustafa?
Huh?
So,
you're not acquainted with feelings for half the time because we're told not to have them or encouraged not to have them. So that's
they don't necessarily help you. They don't necessarily help you in a squared circle. That's for sure.
Well, no, in boxing, this is that's what Michael Bent said, the former WBO heavyweight champion.
Yeah, I love Michael Bent. He's a great guy.
When he went into acting, he said, as a fighter, you have to wear this mask. He said, being an actor, it's all about taking that mask off. He said, and that was the conflict between being a fighter and an actor, a thespian performer. Because,
Michael's a great guy. I love all the guys that I scrapped with and the guys that I came up looking at. I mean, you got to have a different type of respect because it's not easy going between those ropes, between the square circle, like Teddy Alice say, right? Yeah. It's one of the hardest things to do because you're giving up everything. You're giving up your manhood, basically. As you step in that ring, right, and you got past that second doctor visit, it's on.
Yeah.
You can't go out. You got to go out on your shield because after that second doctor visit, and Mike could tell you, it's all bets are off, right? You got to go, right?
Yeah.
You can't pull out. Only way you can pull out is say you get hit by a car or you get food poisoned by accident. But
and nothing, Monte, nothing else counts. You may have had your fingers cut off before you put your hand in the gloves, and nobody want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. No,
exactly.
Yeah, you're in the ring, you're boxing. That's it. That's all we know. Whereas if a fighter, like if a football player twists his ankle and they said, well, he couldn't make that cut because his ankle's da da da. Yeah. And everyone's, he couldn't hit that thing because his finger's swollen because he jammed his fingers with the basketball. Right. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I can understand that. Excuses for days. A boxer can't get not one excuse.
Mm-hmm. And fans are not loyal as it is, so you already know.
Yeah, man, it's definitely eat or be eaten out there, out in the fight world. It's crazy. Let me ask you, what injuries do you feel you suffered in boxing that persist to today?
Well, all right. So I told you I had a bad car accident, right? So that was a concussion, right? And I was in a coma. Then.
When did that happen? When you were young?
That happened in 1986. I was 16 years old. Okay. But fast forward, when I got cleared and stopped boxing, I went and got a full physical. Yeah. And they told me that I probably had a few concussions that I knew nothing about. Yeah. My first severe concussion is I had two concussions. I had the first severe concussion is when I fought Nicolo Valuev.
Okay.
I had 8 knots on my head. I don't remember anything after the 4th round.
Wow.
I was on shield. I mean, Bazier stopped the fight. I think the fight around the 11th round, but that was my first ever severe concussion. I had to stay in the hospital. Yeah. And my second concussion is when I fought Cliff Kauser. Okay. I fought Cliff Kauser, and it was a fight. I was in such a bad space because I just wanted to get away from King, right? Sure. Yeah. And what happened was, I was like, after this fight, I knew King had this under the contract that I could get out because he didn't give me the fight. And I had a strong manager at the time named Rick. So I was looking past Cliff. I wasn't even thinking about Cliff. I was thinking about getting out of the contract. I wasn't even thinking about the next fight. I was so happy to get out of the contract. Right. I got out of the contract, all right, with a loss. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to go out that way, but I went out that way, but I fought him the very next fight because Lou DiBella said, Monte, right now your career is tainted. You lost to Cliff Kowser.
Yeah.
I mean, Cliff Kowser wasn't no bum. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't a B-level fighter, but he was strong. But he got lucky, right?
Yeah.
Or he didn't. I can't say lucky because nobody get lucky in boxing. He put the work in.
We hear that, yeah.
So second fight, I stopped him in the second round, and I got back on track because I got a chance to fight Todd Fields, right?
Yeah.
Right. So but that that was one of those triumph. It was like a trial in time for me because if I didn't stop him in the fashion that I did, my career was over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that Tim Witherspoon claims that he actually tanked that fight with Bunkers Smith, the rematch, when he lost the WBA title, which because he wanted to leave Don King and he just didn't care anymore. He was so demotivated, a little bit like what you were describing there. Tim says he took a dive. He said he threw that fight just because he didn't want to win the fight and stay tied to King and go into what would have been a Mike Tyson unification fight, which Smith got in the end. Back in
I believe that. Listen, Don King, and he's an icon and he's a legend in boxing in the world. Good guy, but bad business guy. But one thing I understood about business is that my first promoter, Joe DeGuardia, he was my manager and then he became my promoter. But I understand this about boxing. Promoters are the person who have the closest relationship are the trainer and the fighter. Right, everybody else is in bed with each other, right?
Yeah.
And once you know that, and you know it's business, at that point it's business. So when I got with Joe and we had a disagreement, a contract disagreement, and I went my separate ways, I understood at that point that it wasn't personal, it was business, and I was able to deal with that better. So Don King, it wasn't personal, it was business. Every promoter you dealt with was business.
So you don't buy into the narrative that Don King's an evil man and a reprehensible individual?
No, Don King might have. Don King been getting away with things his way for so long. If it ain't broke, he ain't gonna fix it.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think that he's an evil person. I think he's a hell of a guy. I mean, I have a lot of fun with him. He liked to eat steak and talk junk. He speaks 4 different languages, maybe 5. You know, I had some good memorable times on him. Even when he went to court. But it's just the business. It's the business. It'll beat you down.
But you know what it is, Monte. You know what they do. Here's the thing. The problem that I have with like promoters or managers and even lawyers in a lot of ways. They come at you, they want your business and they treat you professionally like that, but they come at you with love first. They put love first.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean? They tell you that they love you and you're a gullible fighter. Like what else are you gonna think? They do things so don't worry about that. I'll get that. I love you. And you know what I mean? And all the rest of that kind of stuff. And you're sitting there and you're not coming from like me, myself. I didn't come from a family that had eloquent business practice. You know what I mean? I'm coming up from what everyone else is coming up from. I've never experienced this before. So you're going to get a lump sum of money in your pocket and you're not going to know what the hell to do with it except for spend it. You don't know nothing about investing, none of that. And that's why maybe one of the few boxers that ended up well in life is like Mark Breland. You know, Shelley.
Oh, let me give you an example, Ben. Mike, let me tell you this crazy story with Shelly Finkel. Yeah. So you remember Gary Bell?
Yes.
So that was a good friend of mine. So Gary Bell was fighting on Shelly Finkel. Me and Chico, we both from Queens, South Side. So we was good people, whatever. So we was winning everything in a New York. Shelly came up to me. Beth, me and Beth love you, Monte. We embrace you. And then, Zab was with me. It was me, Chico, and Zab. So Shelly got Zab, right? Shelly's paying us good money. We used to be in camp for like 2 months with Pernell Whitaker, Evander Holyfield, Galata tour. We was just moving with everybody. We in Houston, we in Virginia, we in Cali, we all over. So when I lost in the trials and I went to Shelly's office, it's on tape. I'm gonna send y'all the tape. Somebody did a documentary on me and Zab. It's amazing. It's a 20-minute documentary. Teddy Alice is the narrator. It's a good documentary. It's from Brooklyn.
We need to see that.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you so check this out. So I go to Shelly's office and I said, Shelly, I'm ready, ready to turn pro. He said, hey, Monte, now mind you, me and Beth love you. They call me, you need anything. He embraced me. I thought he was family.
Yeah.
Because when you come from, when you come from where we come from, when people talk like that, you take them as they give it. You take them for their word.
Sure.
And I thought he was like, Monte, I just want to let you know that I'm not interested in signing you as a pro. I said, what? He said, yeah, I don't think you're hungry enough. I don't think that you are, that you'll do good. I was 25. I was 25 when I was about to turn pro.
Yeah.
I was hurt.
Yes.
I was a grown man hurt. I wanted to cry in his office because he just bust my bubbles. I thought I was the shit.
Crush your
And
world.
here we got this guy telling me that he don't think I'm made out to be a fighter. That's why when I fought David Tua and when I fought Dominic Gwynn, I bust their butt because he represent. They was a part of him. Right? But you're absolutely right. You build these bonds with these people, and the only two people that you have the only one person that the fighter has a relationship with is the trainer. The trainer is the only one who cares about him.
I'm 100% on that. I've never. I had an experience with Shelly Finkel myself when I was when I had fought and I suffered my first loss, and I met with him afterwards, and he talked to me personally about, he said, if you get out of your situation, I'd like to work with you, this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, thank you very much. I really appreciate you, but I got to do this. And I had to, continue on my own journey. It was this journey that I could only do on my own at that point. So I came back, it was a few years later, and I had introduced him to my younger brother, Tacumbo, who was a fighter, and I was like, Shelly, I brought Tacumbo to you because I remember when you had spoke to me about, leaving my current situation. And he goes, I didn't ask you that.
Wow.
He came at me like that. I was like,
that's not just like him.
Yeah.
That's not just like him.
You begin to see how, I know, individuals want themselves colored kind of thing, or
it's phony.
They have the ability to speak with a forked tongue. It's like, it's crazy. It's madness.
It's phony, man. It's so bad because the fighter, and I realized this, and this is true, Ben. Look, when the fighter is leave the game, right? Mm-hmm. The promoter still got other fighters. The manager got other fighters. The networks got other fighters. Yeah. We're the only one, and we don't have any. We don't have any type of what's the name? Any type of stability, right? Yeah. So check this out. So Joe DeGuardi he used to be a Bronx DA, hell of a smart lawyer. Joe was a smart guy. So we signed this crazy contract with America Presents, right? Mm-hmm. And in order for them to get rid of me, they had to give me $250,000.
There you go.
So when I lost my fight, and I beat Lance Whitaker, but Lance Whitaker was an in-house fighter. One brother managed him, one guy trained him, and one guy promoted him. Right? So the fight was tight, but I won the fight. And I just signed with Jay-Z's company, Rockaware. Everything was popping. I'm from New York. Boom. I lost the fight. They couldn't kick me to the curb and just, because when fighters lose the fight, they just kick you to the curb and you got to find money. You got to find another promoter. They had to give me $250,000. You know what I'm saying? Or if they didn't give me the $250,000, they had to give me $1 million for my next fight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they opt out to give me the $250,000. But what I'm trying to say is that, we fighters don't have security. No, you know what I'm saying? It's not like we got a union behind us. Eddie Mustafa, myself, and this guy named Walter Johnson, we tried to get with Jimmy Hoffa Jr. and get a union, but that didn't work out because the money we raised, no fighters want to invest in it. We only raised like $50,000 or $60,000. We had to wind up giving it and donating to another organization because none of the fighters wanted to invest in their future.
We've had similar movements in the UK, trying to get the same thing off the ground, and it never seems to come to ultimate fruition for the reasons you just described.
Yeah, nobody want to invest. They just want to invest in what they're doing. They don't want to invest into the sport.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely ways to do it, but they can't be done conventionally. They can't be done as the way other sports are because boxing is just so individualistic. It's so different from any other sport. It's like everyone has their own concerns. And whereas like when you're on a team, everyone collectively has that one concern. And because it's that team and because it's just so overarching the league, you can set formulas and methodologies in place. You know what I mean? How it should go and how guys should get paid. But on an individual sport, like boxing is always like the wild, wild west, no matter what.
Mhm.
From
Yes.
day one, from when it started, from the first caveman who smacked the other guy,
Mhm.
up to like last night's fight, Benavidez and Planet, for instance. You know what I mean? It's like absolute, still caveman politics. It's the same old thing, and everyone fighting for what they want, and it's an individualistic thing, like how we want it in America.
The editor of Boxing News, Matt Christie, was talking about the Fury Usyk negotiations and the breakdown of those talks, and he said that whenever anybody with any semblance of sense criticizes the situation we have in boxing, they're usually told this is the boxing business or boxing is a business. And he said, what kind of business continually flunks its biggest deals like it does today in this era?
Yeah.
So there has to be, and when we talk about unions and aftercare and better education for fighters and better representation, I think that the whole culture needs fixing from the top to the bottom and in the middle, right? But it's a question of we don't seem to hit on a formula of how we can do that, how we can address that.
But let me ask you, only one thing, one way. We spoke to a few different people, union people. The only way that we can neutralize boxing in its entirety for the fighter to get some compensation for their hard work is to make it like a NFL,
League.
A league. That's
And
all we can
that'd
do.
be so much better, Monte.
But you can't, because the promoter, none of these promoters are letting go their fighters. Hell no, because the promoters are going to lose the fighters and the network's going to lose. So so it's not going to ever happen. John King.
Sorry, one thing you can do, just on that point for a second, I believe, is you have to be willing to start from scratch and create new superstars. You can't
with
come
massive
with
amount of money and with a massive amount of investment.
You got to wipe
a
that
lot
off
of work, Mike. That's working backwards.
Yeah, and that's just it. It is a lot of work, and it's a lot.
Dana White says he's interested in maybe coming into boxing and seeing if he can fix.
Did you know I certified him, Dana White?
Yeah.
You did what?
I certified him in fitness boxing before he went to Las Vegas to go to UFC. He was up in Massachusetts, and I was giving fitness. I was giving I taught people how to do boxing for fitness, right? So I was up in. So I'm sorry to take this another way for a second, but I was up there in Massachusetts, and I was teaching them, and I give them a certificate afterwards. There's about 25 teachers in the place, right? And I said to him, Dana, I remember his name specifically and his name on the thing. And I said, so where are you going to go? He goes, I'm going out to Vegas. I'm going to start teaching fitness boxing out there. I'm going to do some gyms. I'm going to like this. I was like, oh, cool. More power to you, brother. Like this, piece of, what was it? 15 years later, 10, 15 years later, he started up this UFC stuff. It was nuts. Yeah. I was like, wow. Okay.
But, and plus those fighters don't really get the type of money that we, as fighters,
that's what I hear, Monty. That's what people say. It's better for the fans of UFC culture, but it's not better for the fighters. So it's only half fixed.
Yeah.
Well, but the only thing about the UFC culture is that it's only one promoter. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that much conflict besides with the fighters to the promoter.
Well, fighters could band together. They could band together and go up against that promoter, because you can let the well will run dry without the fighters. Nothing's gonna happen.
And a lot of the fighters are already out their contract, but they don't look at their contract, because I was in that situation, and when I realized that, I got out of my contract. Yeah. But I want to say, I know Ben, I know you're in England. I want to tell you, I gotta give you credit. David Haye is one of the most clever fighters outside the ring.
Yeah.
He's one of the most clever fighters outside the ring. This guy beat me before I even got in the ring. You know why? Because he made my whole life so uncomfortable before the fight. Yeah. And that was a strategic thing, because the crazy thing, I know I'm skipping to this fight, but this fight, I had to give this guy, this guy's a mastermind. I don't know if he did it intentionally or he had people around him. Whoever did it was very smart. They had me at first class to go to London. They put me on business class. I was like, that's cool. So me and Jimmy Glenn, we get to London, and nobody's there to pick us up, right? Now I'm pissed, right? Yeah. We got to catch a cab, like $250 euros, to go to the hotel. Yeah. And we're supposed to be in the Crown Plaza Hotel by the arena.
Yeah.
We in a rinky-dink Holiday Inn hotel somewhere down in it was, the room was smaller than the kitchen.
Yeah.
I said, I'm in the hotel with fans. Hey, that's Monte Barrett. These guys, it's a whole bunch of fans who's going to the fight who are sharing the hotel with me.
Yeah.
Then we didn't even have nobody to go to the gym. We had to find a gym. They supposed to supply a gym we was there for 10 days.
Yeah.
David Hay had me so flustered. By the time I got to the press conference, I lost it. I lost the fight before I even fought. That's why when I jumped in the ring, I bust my ass. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but I have like over a million views from me falling in the ring.
You getting in the ropes?
I tried to jump over the rope, but you know when I went to check it in the beginning, but fighting, when you fight, by the time you fight, those ropes are loose. So when I went to jump over, I bust, and I was frustrated. I bust my ass. It was hilarious. I had to laugh at it. I was like, but the whole thing was that this guy was so clever that he got me so bent out of shape that when I got in the fight, I was so emotional. Right? I couldn't even throw a good punch because I was throwing everything trying to kill him.
Yeah.
And I had hit him, and I hurt him, and I knocked him down, and the referee counted it a slip or hitting on a break or something like that, and they gave him so much time to recoup because he was out. But and they was hitting me, and one thing I didn't like about London is that they let you hit in the back of the head, and they don't penalize you unless you're an American fighter. They be like, no. I'm like, oh my God! I said he been hitting me in the back of the head the whole time. You didn't say one thing.
And you know what? The referees, that's why they have to have referees that have fought before. They do not understand what it's like getting punched in the back of the head consistently. And even just like remote, every once in a while, never mind consistently. That's like the most delicate, like.
Yeah. And it throws your equilibrium off as well.
Yeah.
You do get some fighters who fought very high level who don't make great referees. Or remember Jersey Joe Walcott in the Ali Lister rematch? So we were talking about that recently on Facebook, Silk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nigel Collins said, Jersey Joe Walcott, great fighter, great guy, lousy referee.
Well, you know what? Like when he told Ali to go to the corner and listen to stay or whatever, they're supposed to listen when you go like this. I guess you know what I mean? He thought I just got to tell these guys once, and they're going to do it.
We got to think about. Man, this is Ali. I mean, Ali is a legend now. Imagine what he was then. He was like God to boxing, you know what I'm saying? So it probably had to be a lot of dealing with him.
To be fair, in 1965, he wasn't quite like God. He was a controversial figure that some people were still unconvinced of. Some people thought the first fight was hooky. He was massively famous, but he wasn't really like a god in 1965. And also, Monte, they were fighting in an ice rink in Maine that night, in Lewiston, Maine, with a 2,200 crowd. It was one of the lowest crowd attendance, perhaps the lowest World Heavyweight Championship crowd attendance in history, because nobody wanted to go to the fight. They kicked the fight out of Chicago because of the political smell around it and the Listen's connections and Ali's, Nation of Islam's connection.
That's so crazy. I fought in Maine on the ice hockey ring too. I don't know if it's the same one. My second fight.
Yeah,
I want to tell you guys about one of the hardest fights I had, mentally and emotionally. Right. So 2.5 years off, I didn't fight. I was in a contract dispute with Joe DeGuardia, and 2000. I think I fought Latimer Klitschko. Then I fought the kid some guy named Davis. I forgot. And then I didn't fight for a while, and then I came back and I fought. I signed with Stan Hoffman. Stan Hoffman was one of the best managers in the world. I love him. I call him Poppy. God bless him.
Good guy.
Yeah, man, great guy. Great guy. Listen, this man was the epitome of a man. Like, he took care of me. Me and him, I was off for 2.5 years. I met him in the city. We went to a diner. We shook hands. He said, I believe in you. I still think you got your best days in front of you. I said, yeah. He gave me $50,000 check on a handshake deal. On a handshake deal.
Right.
This is the mafia stuff, right? He gave me a $50,000 check, like, yo, I believe in you. Boom, we started working together. And, I had my best career, made my best money with him. You know what I'm saying? And I asked him, I said, Poppy, I said, why are you so generous and so nice? Because I said, Poppy, I need $10,000. He said, just go to the bank and get it. You asked a manager, back then, you asked a manager for some money, but man, listen, man. They just and he never recouped the money. He never asked for the money when I fought. He never took the money back or nothing. You know what I'm saying? And when he had got really sick and he had triple bypass surgery, I drove him and his wife wherever they wanted to go. You know what I'm saying? And even
Lou,
when
right? Lou.
Yeah, Lou Willie.
She's
Yeah,
so
the queen.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's the queen of
Lou.
Harlem. She's a great guy. Yeah,
She's
Rachel,
beautiful.
his granddaughter. And then when he had ran into some financial trouble, and when I fought Owen Beck, our contract was over. I still paid him
Yeah.
because that's what people do. When you
Yes.
find a person and take good care of you,
Yeah.
you return the favor. You return a blessing, man. He was a blessing to me. I
Yeah.
mean, he was a great guy. But I fought this kid named Eric Kirkland. Do
I
anybody
know
remember him?
Eric Stone Cold Kirkland. They call
Yo,
him.
let me tell you, that guy. Let me tell you, that guy was smaller than me, and I had this. I wasn't fighting for 2.5 years, mind you. The first punch he hit me, I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
We fought on the main event on ESPN. When I tell you this, like Layman Brewster told me, that's one of my good friends. He told me I had heavy hands, and
Yeah.
Layman Brewster himself, we don't have big hands, but we have heavy hands. This guy Eric Kirkland hit me the first, and he was talking so much junk. Like, oh, Monte Barrett, he's a has-been. I'm gonna wash him, and then I'm gonna fight Joe Messi, and I'm gonna kick his ass. So boom, we fight in New Mexico on ESPN, the main event. The first punch he hit me, I was like, I'm not fighting no more. I don't care how tough I am in the street. I was looking for somewhere to lay down.
Yeah.
You hit me? Every time he hit me, I was looking for somewhere to lay. I was repeating in my head how I was gonna fall and how I was gonna stay down there and spit my mouthpiece out and all that, right? But this guy kept beating me from pole to pole, and I just got pissed. I said, this Negro won't let me lay down. You know what I did? I kicked his ass and knocked him out in the 12th round, or the 10th round, whatever it was. But this guy has some heavy, heavy hands. And that's how I got the Joe Messi fight. Because
it's a funny thing, though, when you ask guys who fought a lot of big stars, you ask them who hit them the hardest, and they often come up with some obscure name that people wouldn't expect, like Eric Kirkland.
Yeah, Eric Kirkland, Eric Kirkland and David Two are probably the hardest punches I fought. I mean, Klitschko and David Hay were the second because they are extreme fitness guys. You know what I'm saying? I went to Spain with Klitschko, and he was knocking all the sparring partners out. So man, you say, Monte, you just start working out with him during the end. I mean, because he was a strong guy. But Klitschko, he's Emmanuel Stewart. He had the best trainer for me personally, from my experience. Emmanuel Stewart is one of the best trainers I've ever seen as far as of work, his body of work. He is a conduit of information. He makes make your opponent your best friend, but your worst enemy. He put all the screens up, all of the guys, the same guy, like whoever you fighting, he have screen, TV here, TV there, TV there. He just have you, he's in your head. He's in your head. He's dissecting the fighter. Look what he's doing, Vladimir. Look at this, Vladimir. Look at that, Vladimir. Even when I was in camp with Lennox Lewis. Look, Lennox, look at this. Look at that. He's looking at all the habits. And he's feeding this to you, and he's having you work on it while you're in the gym.
What did you think was great? A lot of people, what do you think is great about Klitschko? What do you think is maybe you don't think it's great, but what do you think is the most dominant thing about him? Haven't fought him. What do you think what his biggest strengths are?
I think one of his biggest strengths that he was scared to lose. I think his biggest strength was the confidence that he didn't have. But he built a protection around it. He's a great guy. He's very soft. He's totally different from Vitaly. Vitaly, he in camp with bears and all that. He curse you out, whatever. But I like that. He was he kept his vulnerability. He protected it. And I think that he always had to be picture perfect.
Yeah.
So I think one of his greatest abilities was that I just think that he hid a lot of his insecurities. He hid them well.
Yeah. I saw that, and you can almost see it playing out, right? I saw it in the Klitschko Brewster fight.
I was there. I was at that fight.
Were you one of their sparring partners, or you were?
No, I just went to the fight. I just went to the fight. I was out there with Zab hanging out.
Yeah. I mean, that was an incredible fight. I mean, the kind of punishment that Brewster had to go through to get to him.
Yeah.
Well, it was just like, that was epic. And then finally he got to him. And oof.
But Vladimir is a very sneaky fighter. I mean, he caught me on a break with a short left hook. He does, and Manny he does really well when it comes to big heavyweights.
Yeah.
tall heavyweights like Lennox Lewis. He's a master. I mean, you could tell from Hearns.
Yeah.
He teach you how to use your forearms. He teach you how to use so much defense and offense. It's incredible.
Well, he kind of fights afraid, right? Like he
He does.
He doesn't really commit. He doesn't fully commit to it. So everything's like hard and sharp, but it's scary and he locks up. So that's why it's so hard. Every punch is heavy.
I think to the purists it looks horrible, but there's no way you can't say he didn't have an all-time great heavyweight resume. It's impossible to deny that. So he was just so effective, like you say. Partly it was the physical things, and you talk about Manuel Stewart. Both Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko found their real purple patch with him when he made those adjustments. They'd gotten so far and done pretty well. Then after Emmanuel, they became pretty much unbeatable. After
he taught both of them to. Emmanuel seemed to teach both of them how to fight, operate with fear.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean? And yeah, he seems to, and it's the same thing, like, because he almost taught, like, after Hearns fought Leonard the first time, and the big cry after that fight was Hearns didn't know how to lock him up, didn't know how to hang on, and that's what hurt him. Because if he would have held on in the Leonard fight, he could have won that fight. So it's almost like that lesson was the pervading. That was the one most dominant lesson taken away from that fight, and Emmanuel used that for all his fighters, or whenever he fought an opponent that was tentative, and both Lennox and Vladimir were tentative heavyweights, and it would frustrate you sometimes because you look at them and say you're like 6'8" and 250 pounds, and you're clutching the guy and you're grabbing him and you're laying on him. Just go ahead, throw your punches, but you know what I mean. They use that to their advantage because obviously every time you're getting hit, something's being taken away from you.
And Lennox was a good guy.
People were talking about his chin and, not having great punch resistance, and it'd been proven with his knockout losses and knockdowns he suffered against
Purity. He had the raw Purity, I think.
Yeah, Samuel Peter put him down a bunch of times, but still lost.
And then the guy Ross Purity. Remember that guy?
Yeah, Ross Purity. That was his first defeat. Absolutely. And Klitschko later, when he was a little older and wiser, and he was with Manny Stewart, he said, "I have no interest in testing my chin. It's made of glass. I know that." He learned to fight with that knowledge, and he'd learned to remove that vulnerability by making it impossible to nail him.
I remember watching him against this South African kid. Was it Sanders?
Corey Sanders.
Corey Sanders. Yeah, I was like, ooh, man. Yeah. And Corey Sanders was an incredible. His fight with didn't he fight Rockman as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they went toe to toe. That was an incredible fight. But
And Rockman, let me tell you something. Rockman. So when me and Hasim Rockman fought, we was cool. We had like a little rivalry thing, but we got past that because Zab was our connection, and I even spent time at his house and things like that. The 4th of July, whatever. But then I didn't have to fight. I didn't have so James Prince, right? You remember James Prince, right?
Of course,
yeah. Right. So James Prince, right? James Prince signed Hasim Rockman, right? Yeah. So James Prince, he had flew me down to Texas, and he was like, "Yo, I want to sign you because I don't want you to fight Rockman because it's peanut money. I want you to just wait and you fight the winner of Vitaly and Rockman because Vitaly's coming out of retirement." So he was like, so I was like, I should have listened to him. He's a very smart guy. And what he said, listen, he gave Rockman some money, right? And he said, it's what you call it when they give him money and you got to give it back to whatever. So I'm so used to giving, when people give me money, they give it for my talent. Yeah. Right. There's no advance, right? It was no advance. So he said, I'll give you, I think he said like 250, 300,000. He said, I'll give it to you in advance. And he said, you'll give it back to me when you fight. And I was like, and me, I wasn't thinking, I was young. I'm thinking about, but that's his money that I deserve because I never had to return anybody no advance money. Mm-hmm. So he was like, but you're going to make your first 7-figure payday with me, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was the second in the WBC. I was number 1 in everything else. Yeah. And Vitaly had the WBC. So he was like, Rockman's number 1, you number 2. Whoever win, you get the fight and you're going to make whatever. Just trust me. I was like, all right. So then Trinidad fought in MGM, I guess, against, I forgot who he fought against. Winky, right? Yeah. So, right. So I went to his house in Vegas and he was like, yo, what you going to do? And I didn't bite on it. And then he had already signed Rockman. So Don King, I was getting ready to fight Rockman. I got like 250, 275. It wasn't nothing, right?
Yeah.
Then Don King said, he came to me. I thought this was the Illuminati, because this was Don King came to me and said, hey, brother. He said, man, you're looking good over there, man. He said, you're going to win that fight. And when you win, listen to me now. Listen to me. I said, I'm listening, Don. What? When you win, we gonna get Vitaly, and you know what? We're gonna bid high, but I'm gonna give you low. I'm gonna give you like 1.5, but we're gonna bid for like 2.5, 3 million. You okay with that? I said, Don, we gonna talk. I don't want to talk about that. We talk about that after the fight. Okay. You know how Don talk, right?
Yeah.
But then I didn't know that him and Rockman had the same talk, but Rockman say, okay, he agreed to it, right?
Yeah.
So Carl King signed up Hasim Rockman 10 days before my fight, gave him $300,000, right? Now they gave James Prince, took care of James Prince. Now Rockman already had everything in motion. He knew he was jumping ship. Soon as because the promoter have all influence on everything in the whole card, right? It was a tight fight, but I won the fight, right? And then what happened? Soon as Rockman won the fight and his hand was raised, he signed already with Bob Arum.
Yeah.
And Dick Don King, right?
Yeah.
But Don King, that's what he get. Sometimes, but you know what I'm saying? Like it was, but that's what I'm saying. That's called karma. And then he went on to fight James Toney in Atlantic City. But what I'm trying to say is that, right? But it was like, it's been some, business is shaky in the boxing world, man. You don't know which side you on.
Yep.
Sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it works against you.
I believe that's a common strategy to bid really super high when they're not really paying the fighters that, but they just don't want the other guy's promoter to get it. So
yeah, I agree.
Monte, when did you? I'm sorry, I know we're getting deep into this, and it's getting late and everything, and I just want to get this out because I know we're gonna have to depart pretty soon. Sorry, Ben, we're going overtime. But when did you feel the greatest about life during your, like, what's the most positive time in your fight life that you felt the great? Like, it may be in that first time you were discovered, like on TV, you got that knockout, and it was like, wow, you just felt like you were unstoppable. When was that time in your life?
I think the time was when I had fought Dominic Gwynn.
Yeah.
I felt unstoppable because he was rated to be the next great American heavyweight from Emmanuel Stewart on HBO.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Stewart said, this is the next great American heavyweight, Dominic Gwynn. He just knocked out that big African guy.
Yeah.
I forgot his name. He said he's the next guy. I'm telling you, he's gonna oversee everything. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna break this record, that record. And I went his hometown and beat him.
Yeah.
On HBO on the coast with Jermaine. It was Jermaine Taylor was the main event, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that was like one of my greatest moments because I trained so hard for that fight, and that I felt like, he was number 2 or 3. That's why I went up to the ranking so high, because I was like I was in the top 10. I think I was number 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So when the top 10 guys fight each other, you go up high.
Yeah.
So I went to like number 1 and number 2 behind that win.
Yes.
So that was my Teflon moment when I felt like Teflon Don.
And you just felt like the whole world was open for you. Like there's nothing everything was just unimpeded. You were just going to go, like, life was just so good for you. You can get anything you want. You could see yourself with the riches and the cars and the houses and the world.
And I had it all already.
Look at them just then. It was just...
Yo, listen, let me tell you something. I was doing so great that I went on The Price is Right and got selected. Right after I fought Dominic Gwynn. Bob Barker, I went to The Price is Right. I got called up, and it was crazy. It's 500 people in the audience. You don't know who they're gonna pick. They just ask you 3 questions. What's your name, where you're from, and what's your favorite game besides Plinko? That's it. Right? Wow. They call me, Monte Barrett, come on down. You're the best contestant on The Price is Right. I go down there, I get on, I win, I go to the Showcase Showdown, and I lose, but I got a 2-week trip to China. I was like, oh my God. I was like, everything was, I came back to the hood. all the ladies like, you gonna take me on that trip with you to China? Old lady trying to get in my pants. I was like, no.
Who did you take?
I took my wife at the time, my second wife.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Probably
We
the
had a
best
great
thing.
time.
Yeah, that was smart.
Yeah,
Right,
that
Good,
was
good investment. Good
Yeah.
investment. Oh man,
But,
yo, it's been a
life is-
blessing
you know.
speaking to you, Monty. It's like it's so great. Thank you so much.
Well, man, I love you guys. I thank you, man. I thank you for being the support to this sport, our sport, boxing. You know, and I got
Yeah.
so many great things going on. The most important thing
Yeah.
I got going on is I have all my faculties, at least half of them,
Yes.
and I can still
Yeah.
speak after all these hard fights I've been through. Right,
Yeah,
so I'm happy
right.
about that. And then
Yes.
I just released a children's book. It's on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Books a Million. It's called Mr. Story, Mister Story. It's
And
about
what's that about? Please
a
tell
young
me.
kid. It's about a young kid who's going through life trying to figure out what's next, and he's helping everybody. And sometimes he feel lonely. So it's about me as a little kid and how I was trying to navigate through life and figure things out. But at the end, I always figured it out because God was always with me. Yep.
And Mr. Story, that's available on Amazon, or is there any?
Amazon, Target, Walmart, Books a Million. It's on all platforms. Barnes and Noble.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's
So
for adults too, right? Like I could read it.
Yes. Well, we got a it's 12 series, and also I'm working on right now I'm working on a documentary for myself with a couple of different producers I'm talking to. So it's a lot of good things is going on. And I just bought a building in South Carolina, St. George, South Carolina, 6,400 square feet with a parking lot to build out the gym and also classrooms. I'm starting an after-school program, and it's to help the kids and get them off the street. Put down the guns, pick up the gloves, and get back in the class.
Wow, you're really
It's called
giving
House
back.
of Champions. It's myself and Zab Judah. We have a nonprofit called House of Champions. You know, the website is houseofchampions.com. You know, and the email is houses of champions info at let me make sure I got it right.
Okay.
Info at housesofchampions.com.
Okay. info@housesofchampions.com.
Yeah. Yep.
That sounds beautiful, man. And you know what? We got to get Zab on here too, because both of you are two positive brothers. Like, people don't understand. Like, they look at fighters and they see them on TV and they see a certain way about them, but you meet them in person, it's absolute different beasts. I mean, we're in fight mode, right? You're in fight mode. You're just something else. You're not what people are seeing. But then when they see individuals like you're sitting here and you're so you're eloquent with your conversation and you know what I mean, and that's warm and inviting, and I really appreciate that about you.
Well, Mike, Zab's getting inducted into the New York Boxing Hall of Fame on April 30th, and guess who's bringing him in?
No,
so we might.
Man.
Yeah, it's gonna be a party. So, and after that, he rented out the next door, the ballroom. So he's gonna have an after party.
Okay,
it's gonna be crazy.
I'm there, man. I'm there.
Yeah, April 30th is gonna be crazy.
Okay, I'm in. Sweet.
Well, Monte, it's been fantastic to get to know you over this last hour and a quarter. And I got to say, Silk, you are smashing it with these guests lately. Every time you get someone on, Virgil Hill, Danny Romero, I think that was the best. Then we get the new guy, and the bar gets raised. And I think this show was the best. So,
wow.
Let's face it. No matter who we have on, you know it's the best podcast in the world of boxing, and you can tune in next week when I'm sure he's going to come up with some other fantastic individual. This week, Monte Barrett, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Get involved.
Thanks, Monty. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, brother. Yeah, take care.